I am a scientist working for the government, working for the military for the government, and I am studying ESP psychic abilities on children, but my experiments have gone wrong and I cannot control the subjects anymore. So therefore, we must get the government to drop an atomic bomb on Tokyo. Now 30 years later, I have clearly not learned anything from my mistakes. Everybody shut up and action! Alright guys, that is kind of the premise behind Akira, anime film from 1988, somewhere around then, and it is something, to say the least. Akira is basically an anime film about the government taking kids and doing ESP experiments on them, especially after 30 years after an atomic bomb was dropped on Tokyo because of experiments like this, where they couldn't control it, and now they're going right back to it. And this time, there's a biker gang in Tokyo, and one of their friends is kidnapped and having experiments done on. So the leader of the biker gang is trying to save his friend. That is essentially the story of this movie. And with that being just the basic essence of the story, there's a lot going on in this movie, and it is something to say the least. In all honesty, I did not like this movie too much. I found it quite boring, but it was interesting to say the least, with the main point of interest being the relationship between Tetsuo, who was the boy who was kidnapped to have ESP experiments done on, and Kaneda, who is our protagonist, the leader of the biker gang who's trying to save his friend. Honestly, there's a lot going on in this world, from government being full of corrupted politicians, from the military worrying about their experiments, the military scientists, the military who are trying to regulate the experiments to make sure they're able to keep it in control, the protests happening in society because the government is pieces of crap. There's a lot going on in this movie besides this main story in the background aspect, and it can feel a little overwhelming. Though, if we're being honest, it sort of helps with the character development for all the characters, the side and mains. And if we're talking about the points of interest, literally the only thing that actually kept me going through this entire movie is the relationship between Kaneda and Tetsuo. I found this movie to be quite interesting regarding those aspects and their friendship and them trying to save each other, and the rest of the movie to be kind of boring. Though this movie is really fast-paced and action-packed. Like, I mean, the action scenes are pretty, like, there is a lot of action in this movie, and the action sequences were really interesting to watch. They were really cool to watch in a way, I guess, but like they were all still quite boring. This movie is fast-paced. Everything develops quickly, happening one thing after another. It's pretty spontaneous. Everything developed quickly, but then like in the middle it kind of slows down and it kind of starts putting you to sleep. But then it picks up right again with the action, and suddenly you're right back to sharp, jolted awake into the movie once again. So it's kind of perfectly balanced, as all things should be. But like, yeah, that's basically what this movie is. I found it quite boring. It's more a character developmental sort of film, more in the aspect of the relationship between the lead and protagonist and the government's experiments on the kid, with Akira being this holy, godly ESP sort of thing, which I still don't understand entirely. It's a little confusing. There are times this movie gets kind of annoying to follow and understand, but like for the most part it's pretty straightforward and simple to understand. That kind of contradicts each other, but like if you see the movie, head on straightforward, it feels kind of simplistic and easy to understand, but as it progresses it kind of gets a little confusing. Hard to follow. And as I do with a lot of old movies that people have seen before me, I kind of just read up on this movie a little after the movie, because I mean it's clearly talked about as some peak animation, some peak anime movie, like some greatness, like the epitome of an anime film, and I'm like, hell nah, like this is a more artistic sort of film for sure, but like at the same time it is not that great. I mean, like, maybe animation-wise, for back then in 1988, this was a huge milestone, and, like, even now, I really enjoyed the animation. Like, it's an older style of animation, but the animation was really cool and enticing. I really enjoyed that. But, at the same time, the story-wise, like, the key aspect here, it kind of fell off. It kind of got really boring. It wasn't that captivating a story. Not that interesting. Like, I mean, it feels more dystopian type of thing. I'm not really into that, but, like, it just felt kind of stale and boring, and it was stale at times plot-wise. Literally the only thing that had me going, I said it before, it is the relationship between Kaneda and Tetsuo, because it's really interesting to try and understand their characters, especially how Tetsuo character kind of changed personality-wise from the beginning to the end, though I think that's, even though it's mainly because of his gain of power, it's really interesting to take a look at his character and his relationship with Kaneda. Like, that was the key impact point of this movie that had me going like, Okay. Okay. And, like, understanding these characters and their psyches is, like, kind of what had me going in this movie, and it what had me interesting the most, especially with the fight scenes revolving those two. So this movie really feels more character-driven, especially from the aspect of Tetsuo and Kaneda. And, I mean, that's literally it. Like, the world building, like, more like area building for Tokyo, the setting building, we'll go with that. The setting building was nice. The area looked amazing. The way they built the surroundings, the city, it was all great. And then when you combine it with the storyline, it's a boring storyline with a beautifully looking city. It kind of just gets really tedious and not that great. The storyline just wasn't interesting enough, and it really just kills on the vibe from the great setting building. And then, like, especially when you toss in the characters, it's a character-driven anime. A lot of the characters look great, the character designs are great, but some of the military characters look the same as everyone else. Like, it was hard to differentiate some characters from one another, and some characters just looked plain old creepy in a manner, and it besides the leads, it just got really stale. It just got really stale, really uninteresting, and it was really starting to put me in a tiresome state where I was just getting ready to sleep. But those two characters had me looking at this movie full on through. And besides the interaction between those two characters, I was just waiting for this movie to end. It felt long and just tiring to watch. Is it worth a watch? I would say yes. I mean, if you're really into old anime and, like, you're really into artistic sort of films per se, like Nope, like, or like films like Nope, like maybe if you're into like more Grand Budapest Hotel, maybe if you're into movies like that and you're fine with watching animated films, I think this movie is one for you. Especially like if you're into older culture and more cultured films, I feel like this is one you will thoroughly enjoy. But would it be at the top of my list to recommend to literally anyone? Not really. Would I recommend it though? Probably. It was a decent watch, even though I rated it low at a 60%. It's still barely a bop. It was decent. I like the character relations. That's all I gotta say. Peace.